This is the Roundhouse Report. This is the Roundhouse Report, Jody Roundhouse. It's April 12th, Friday afternoon. I'm here to ask you, is NATO still necessary? NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is it still viable? Is it still necessary? Do we still need it? Because NATO was created in 1949 to counter the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, which was kind of like Stalin's version of NATO, I guess. I don't know. But do we still need NATO now that the Cold War has ended? Yeah, we do. But we need to change it. And I'm going to explain why as briefly as possible. And it's going to be hard to be as brief as possible because I spent the afternoon taking absurd notes that you would see in the movie Freaking a Beautiful Mind, okay, with what's that dude's name? That one guy in it, pretty good actor, he did a good job. All right, so this is what I'm working with, okay? Now this is a Time magazine article. It's dated April 15th, 2019. And it has Biden on the cover, Creepy Joe. He has a good smile though. This article was written by Admiral James Stavridis. He's retired. Stavridis, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he was the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. So this guy knows what he's talking about. He's been in the game a long time. To be the Supreme Commander of NATO is a big deal. This is how he begins the article. I'm going to read it. And this is coming straight from the Admiral, former general, or former Supreme Commander of NATO. Okay? Very few Americans could find tiny Montenegro on a map. That's a country, by the way, the latest country to join NATO, 29th member. Very few Americans could find tiny Montenegro on a map. Fewer still could offer a cognate description of the differences between Slovenia and Slovakia. Most can't name the 3 Baltic countries, yet thanks to Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's charter, which was signed 70 years ago in Washington, every American is bound by law. Well, whose law? International law or national law? Not sure. But is bound by law to defend with blood and treasure each of those nations and 22 others to boot. I made videos about this before. If Russia invaded under the guise of we are protecting native ethnic Russians and they sent a 500-man army or a freaking brigade or something into Lithuania, 20 miles into the wilderness, went into the forest and set up camp and just chilled there like 500 Russian soldiers. Lithuania would declare Article 5, and that's when it's like, all right, what is Lithuania? Is that the latest rap group? Is that a new type of drug? What is the Lithuania? We'd have to, 8 out of 10 people on the street would not know what Lithuania is, and if they knew it was a country, I doubt they could know, where on the map it is. Different forms of NATO. NATO version 1.0. That was the original NATO meant to counter the Soviet Union. NATO 2.0. That was right after the 9/11 attacks. NATO 2.0, it kind of reorganized itself to conducting counterterrorism and counterinsurgency and anti-piracy campaigns in Iraq, Libya, and the Horn of Africa and Syria. Not to mention Afghanistan, because NATO is in Afghanistan with us now. I'm not sure if they are now. I know there's about 10,000 troops. I think the rest of NATO is left. So 29 members in the alliance. NATO 3.0 came along. Okay, NATO 3.0 involves Putin's strategy of, without firing a shot, systematically breaking apart the alliance system that has held true for 70 years and won the Cold War. He has been, since he assumed power almost 2 decades ago, President Putin of Russia has been systematically trying to undermine the ideologies of the, quote, Western world and democracy and liberalism in general, And in many ways, he's right, but in many ways, he's a little bit wrong and kind of rough about it, a little bit too Machiavellian. But his goal has been to slowly fragment NATO without NATO even realizing it. Okay, now Trump's helping and he's hurting. Like I said, NATO 3.0 came about after Russia's invasion of Georgia. I'm reading from the article. It says Putin, ironically, revitalized the alliance, NATO, and launched NATO 3.0. Russia's invasion of Georgia in 2008 and Ukraine in 2014, when it annexed Crimea. It gave new purpose to NATO, and it gave new resolve. Hybrid warfare was born. Google Little Green Men strategy, the Little Green Men in Crimea. Full-blown special operations dudes wearing full gear, except there's no Russian flag on them. Nowhere to be seen. Tanks, armored personnel carriers, artillery, no Russian insignia of any kind. Plausible deniability. Everyone knows it's freaking Russia, but plausibly you can deny it because Putin could say there's no Russian troops there, there are no Russian flags. Show me the Russian troops. There are mercenaries that are fighting there. And that's another, the gray zone hybrid warfare, using the term, quote, mercenary. Putin likes to do that to save face when Russian troops are slaughtered. For instance, when the United States slaughtered killed 250 Russian mercenaries inside of Syria and then wounded another 200, they were called, quote, mercenaries. And that was a show of force where Russia backed down. Historically, the Soviet Union and Russia, whenever they step up and then they're met with aggression, they're met by force, rather, traditionally they've always stepped down. Look at this guy's article. Yeah. So NATO 3.0, right, is an update. We updated our NATO defense war plans. This is back to the article. We updated our NATO defensive war plans, conducted significant training exercises, and requested additional forces across the organization to maintain a higher level of readiness. Putin's subsequent actions, including the shooting down of a Malaysia Airlines jet over the Ukraine and increased aggression in the air and on the high seas around NATO's periphery, in the Baltics and the Balkans, all that drew the alliance together into a common enemy. It's like the Cold War again. Now, Trump has been bashing a lot of NATO allies, but that's simply because, it's worked. People talk crap about it. Like, oh, don't be mean to the allies. Well, several NATO allies are now contributing substantially more money to NATO annually than they were before. You can thank Trump for that. Could Russia make a similar set of moves on a NATO ally? They've been investing, Putin has practiced hybrid warfare against his neighbors, the would-be NATO members, Georgia and Ukraine. And this is one of the reasons why Georgia had a war with, or Russia initiated a war against Georgia in 2008 and initiated the Ukraine crisis in 2014, is because both wanted to join NATO. So the would-be NATO members, Georgia and Ukraine, Putin used a lethal mixture, and this is gray war zone, or this is gray hybrid warfare, gray zone warfare. He used a mixture of propaganda, social network manipulation, cyber operations, special forces, unconventional terrorist-like attacks, poses, and also my own thing, I forgot what it was. All these things pose a different kind of threat than the tanks and the missiles that the Cold War threatened. Could Russia make a similar set of moves on a NATO ally? And the admiral who formerly commanded NATO said it's unlikely, but possible. Okay, it's possible. The United States, the Russians, the Chinese have all been developing heavily in advanced missile-based aerial technologies, weaponizing space. That's been taking place for a decade plus. We just recently made it official by making the Space Command, in part to just deter enemies like China and Russia, who are near peer competitors. China will be a peer competitor in about 10 years. They're making a lot of gains because they steal all of America's stuff and they reverse engineer it and then make it, it's ridiculous. And them hacking into Boeing and Lockheed. But anyhow, lost my train of thought. Let me go back to the notes. First of all, this is the Roundhouse Report. Please subscribe. And this video obviously is about NATO and the viability of NATO. Is NATO really still necessary? The liberal view, with regards to NATO and when it was first formed in 1949, was to secure and ensure democracy in Western Europe against communism, Soviet style, Stalin style communism, to be specific. Everyone hug, everyone hug. America's spreading democracy. The European nation states that it, along with England, had conquered, quote, liberated, just like the Soviets, from the Nazis during World War II. If you Google the Marshall Plan, you'll see that was a economic aid package to rebuild Western Europe and to establish lingering to this day economic ties. It would be hard to break between the European economy, now the EU, and the United States, and any other unilateral trade agreements that we may have. The realist, conservative, realpolitik approach with regard to why NATO was even made is NATO represented the official formation and recognition of the post-World War II American empire. Called for what it is. The history books will, the American empire, the Pax Americana, which is still alive and well today, albeit under threat, under risk from Putin's Russia and Xi Jinping's rising militaristic China. And these Putin and Xi Jinping, these are unknown actors. That's what makes it so dangerous. These guys could end up being the next Hitler, for all we know. We don't know. It's too fluid. It's too fast moving. But be sure the Pax Americana is still alive and well. The sea lanes are still open. The millennials can still get their cell phones. But it's about to come to an end when the next war breaks out. And I think it'll be with China, maybe 5 years, 10 years, my prediction. Whether it's a flash war or an all-out freaking total war, I don't know. But the Max Americana is coming to an end, and millennials have no idea what's in store for them. LOL. Horde. Okay? Horde. LOL Horde. Okay? Jeez. The challenges that NATO faces today, April 12, 2019, hybrid gray zone warfare, developed and spearheaded by Putin's Russia. Because let's face it, Russia's petrol-based, fuel-based, sanctions-riddled economy is just too weak to sustain a large, protracted war. What the Russians are doing in Syria is very small scale as relative to major conventional military operations. They're basically just doing airstrikes, and they have special operations on the ground to call in those airstrikes. So, again, look up Little Green Men Mercenaries for greater understanding of hybrid gray zone warfare, because that's kind of that's going to come into its own in the next war, gray zone warfare. And it's already happening now. Hence, in Crimea, the next people who have to make the world map, they're going to have to redraw Crimea as part of Russia, etc. But Russia, with their expansive international cyber operations campaign, their election meddling, they have an elaborate misinformation campaign, the Russians do. The Chinese do as well, but to a lesser extent. But the Russians have a big misinformation campaign. Is Russia still a military threat to NATO? Indirectly, they are through the gray zone hybrid warfare. Through forming rifts between NATO allies, which it has successfully done, and ironically, Trump has helped him, but at the same time, double irony has helped NATO. So kind of weird. In the end, we're better off for it. But Putin's trying to form rifts between NATO allies, and a perfect example is the United States and Turkey, and both operating inside of Syria and Syrian civil war. Both are in disagreement over the Kurds and who should control what. That's a perfect example, this NATO infighting. Putin loves it. This is what Putin wanted all along, what he's been working toward all along. Through his constant stream of information, straight up freaking propaganda, like the RT, Russia Today, it's just, it's spread throughout Europe, throughout the United States, throughout the world. Some of the guys are being a credible news source, RT, but it's Russian propaganda. It's interesting to look at to see what the Russians want us to think, or at least what they want us to think. But so it's interesting. I sometimes use them as a source. They also hire random internet forum and social media trolls to talk about like how great Russia is. The Chinese do as well. I don't know if they're paid per post or what. Military challenges that we are facing, that the West is facing. Russia under Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. Again, he's an untested character. He tacitly withdrew from the INF treaty. That stands for, I don't remember what it stands. Intercontinental Nuclear Intermediate Nuclear Forces Agreement. It has to do with medium-range ballistic and cruise missiles. The Russians tacitly withdrew, all sneaky-like, from the INF treaty around 2008, 2009. Thank you, Obama. And Trump made it official. The America, we went about it the right way. We made it official. We withdrew, and then all of a sudden, everyone's yelling at Trump for starting an arms race, where Russia already has these types of weapons deployed. They're banned. They've been banned since the late 80s under the INF, and they've had them deployed since at least 2010. And I'm talking about medium-range ballistic and cruise missiles. Ballistic missiles, they fire up in the trajectory, they arc back down. That's what our missile defense is trying to kill. These cruise missiles, these are guidable. They go so fast that, let's say Paris or Berlin, if Russia were to launch such a missile blitz using these medium-range missiles that were banned, but now they have redeployed, conventional warheads, you can put nukes on them, but just using conventional warheads, they could level like Berlin, and Berlin would have 30 seconds notice. 30 seconds notice because these guys go over Mach 8. That's over 6,000 miles per hour. 6,000 miles per hour. And for the Russians, they have the latest and greatest, second to the United States. Jamming technology, although that's debatable. Sensors, they really put a lot of money into technology, and to have a guidable cruise missile, and to be able to fire off a volley of say 50 of them, and to have them maneuver at 5,000 miles per hour or whatever it may be, and be able to light up Berlin or Paris or London in just a matter of minutes. I mean, that's just completely insane. And yet everyone criticizes Trump when he actually officially believes it, that he's starting the new arms race. That is false. America is simply trying to keep up / catch up to the gains that Russia and especially China have made in the military field over the past 2 decades, while the American military has been tied up in Iraq and in Afghanistan. So they're the ones that started the arms race, China and Russia. Trump is simply like, all right, unlike Obama, Trump is like, okay, you're going to do it, then we're going to do it too. Screw off. Screw off. Okay, so Trump made it official. These types of missiles, these medium-range ballistic and cruise missiles that are currently deployed, and by the way, those cruise missiles that are maneuverable, they're very hard to shoot down. As I speak, they are deployed by the Russians. Under the INF, research and development for these types of missiles was not banned, but the creation of them and the deployment of them was banned. So I'm sure as I speak, we are creating them best of the best, and they are being perfected, tested, and they will be deployed soon in Europe. Because Putin has an escalate to de-escalate strategy. You may want to Google that. Again, escalate to de-escalate. If Putin uses a low-yield tactical nuclear weapon he explodes, let's say the Hiroshima blast killed an area 5 miles by 5 miles, a populated area, just for the sake of simplicity, 5 by 5 miles. In Hiroshima. Putin would drop a bomb that's half a mile by half a mile, nuclear, low yield radiation, in the middle of nowhere, not killing anybody, no radiation fallout to speak of, just to show that he's willing to do it. And that's if he's fighting a conventional war against us, against the United States, against NATO, and he begins to lose, and he does that. United States, whoever's in the White House, whoever's running freaking NATO, whoever's running the freaking nearly destroyed political systems of Europe, hopefully they will be fixed. They're going to be like, WTF. That dude just went nuclear. We're going to back down. And not having an answer, because there's a difference. Strategic nuclear weapons destroy cities. Tactical nuclear weapons destroy army groups. So if a tactical nuke went off, it would scare everybody. The Russians have that capability. They're already deployed. not nuclear tipped, conventionally tipped. We don't have the capability. We don't even have, we have them developed, ready to go, but we don't actually have them made. Now they're being made under Trump. We've also opened up a new, or an previously decommissioned nuclear testing site in the desert out west in the United States to begin testing, upgrading and updating our current Minuteman missile program. I believe it's the Minuteman. So does Russia pose a military threat to NATO? Yeah. Is NATO still necessary? Well, Russia under President Vladimir Putin, again, the escalate to de-escalate is disconcerting to say the least. And also, China was never a signatory to the INF Treaty, and that's one more reason why Trump said we're going to get out, because if China isn't going to abide by this legally, and Russia is openly violating it by violating international law vis-a-vis the treaty, I'm going to officially withdraw the United States, do it the right way, take the high ground, deploy this crap. The Russians will back down. Because if you look at history, the Soviet Union / Russia, they have always backed down when faced with force, when met by force. An examples quickly, the Berlin airlift. You'd have to Google these because I'm not going to get into each and every one of them. The Berlin airlift. The Soviets made a move. We responded. They backed down. The 1967 Six-Day War between Israel and neighboring Arab states. Russia supported the Arabs. We supported Israel. There was talk of Russian intervention. Then the Americans said, if you intervene, we're going to intervene. Russia backed down. Okay. Cuban Missile Crisis in the early 60s under President Kennedy. We became very close to nuclear war then, as you, I'm sure, are well aware of. But we met them with a naval fleet blockading Cuba. We met their fleet. They blinked, as they say, and they turned around and they went home. We met them by force and they backed off. The 1973 Yom Kippur War, again with Israel fighting in that war, namely Egypt and Syria. The USSR began actually loading landing craft with troops to support the Arabs, namely the Egyptians, who they were selling their high-end military equipment to. They actually began loading landing craft, and they began putting together a fleet to go and assist the Arabs. And America immediately responded by switching our DEFCON level, which is defense readiness, and it's a nuclear term. The lower the level, the more imminent nuclear war is, the more ready we have to be. Currently, we reside at 4, which is, quote, above normal readiness. We normally reside around DEFCON 4, DEFCON 5. DEFCON 5 is normal readiness. We're normally around there. When it seemed like the Soviet Union was going to invade the Middle East to fight against Israel on the Arabs' behalf, excuse me, our DEFCON level dropped to 3. And 3 means that our likelihood and readiness for nuclear war, it's increased and the proper steps are taken. The Air Force is mobilized so that within 15 minutes of being noticed, of being put on notice, they can mobilize within 15 minutes to fight and to strike back. Soviets backed down. They said that the Americans had itchy trigger fingers when we switched our DEFCON down to 3. And by the way, interesting side note, DEFCON 3, the code name for that is Roundhouse. And this is the Roundhouse Report with me, Jody Roundhouse. Had a special shirt made. Even got the back. Give him props. Don't know if you can see it. But anyhow, the Soviets backed down once again under Reagan when he talked about initiating the Star Wars Defense Initiative. Everyone called it Star Wars. It was a space-based missile defense initiative that scared the USSR and led one of the reasons that led to its collapse. To put it into context, well, the basic conclusion is right now, 2019, a new European-based NATO has been formed, NATO 4.0. And it's more aggressive. Germany, France, the United Kingdom, or Britain, and the United States, they have troops permanently stationed, before they did not, permanently stationed in the Baltic states and in Poland, doing a rotational basis. We also have missile defenses set up in Romania and in Poland, I believe, and also possibly Czechoslovakia, but I'm not sure. The Balkans are a concern. That's one of the reasons why we put in that latest member, Montenegro. It's weird. Let me look. If I can't find it quick, I'm just gonna roll. I think it's in the freaking article. Yeah, I haven't read this, all the notes about the article. Because if I do for real, this would be like a 50-minute video. No one would watch this. I doubt anyone's watching right now, to be quite frank. And if you are, like the video, and that'll tell me that you watched it, or just comment. I watched the whole thing because I'm at 25 minutes now. NATO 4.0. Trump's cabinet's response to Russian military aggression and assertiveness. But like I said, we officially withdrew from the INF treaty. The U.S. and our European allies in NATO are beginning to do what Russia has already been doing for years now in violation of the INF treaty, which is deploying tactical intermediate range nuclear warheads. Well, the potential, you can tip them with conventional weapons. They don't need to be nuclear. I want to make a new NATO, and I've actually made a video. If you scroll through my videos of making like a new NATO, I guess it'd be called NATO 5.0. But because of the existential mass migration that's been occurring in Europe the last number of years, mainly from the Middle East, Syria, also from Africa, and the nationalistic backlash within Europe, the indigenous people, the backlash, once the migrants started causing a bunch of problems like gang raping women, and then the media in Germany and France and stuff trying to black it out, and in Britain, the gang rape squads that go around, it's awful. Retired Admiral Stavridis, who's the overall commander of the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, relatively, I think he retired in 2010 or I don't know 2013. I'm not sure. He thinks that NATO is a great juggernaut beast. He loves NATO. He loves it. He loves that we are making it better, stronger, that we are reformulating it, reorienting it. We are changing our troops. Like I just said, we are forward deploying. The United States has 5,000 troops inside of Poland that are going to be getting rotated in and out. The Germans have 5,000 troops in Estonia. The French have 5,000 in Latvia. The British have 5,000 in Lithuania. It's all spread up, but they're permanent. It's a tripwire force against Russia. Russia knows if they invade Poland and kill American troops, that will rally the United States to go to war. If the Russians roll into Lithuania and kill a bunch of German troops, and Germany declares Article 5, Germany's different than Lithuania. Everyone knows about Germany. I don't know what would happen then. But that is I have to make my conclusion. The Roundhouse Report, again, please subscribe. I'm about to monetize my YouTube, hopefully. As long as NATO, or rather, as long as NATO's resurgent aggressiveness, their new aggressive posture, continues its current trend, everything's going to be just fine. In terms of Europe and the immediate surrounding area, everything is going to be just fine. We don't have anything to worry about. One thing that I would say to caution against would be a simultaneous breakout where China breaks out from the South China Sea at the same time that Russia uses gray zone hybrid warfare and sends some little green men into Estonia to sit for days to see wait and see what happens after they declare Article 5. At which point NATO, unless they respond, NATO will be no longer viable and it will be dissolved to fait accompli, be de facto. There would be no more NATO. I want to make a new NATO. The first freaking thing I want to do, unless Turkey gets its act together, I'm going to kick Turkey out. I know that in terms of geography and geostrategy, it's in a perfect position in the world. It's great. It can block Russia. It's beautiful. But if they don't clean their shit up, excuse my language, the first thing I'm going to do is kick Turkey out, and I'm going to make a big deal out of it. If I was in charge, UN General Assembly, long rant, just like this. What you just watched, UN General Assembly, New York City, live. All right, this is the Jody Roundhouse Report signing out. Please hit me up on minds.com. It's the alternative to Facebook. Minds.com/Jody Roundhouse. One word. All right. Hope you guys learned something. Please comment. Bye.